Aren't all religions basically the same? What about those that never heard the gospel? And is Jesus the only way to salvation? These are some of the questions we want to explore in this series on world religions and new religious movements.
Thy kingdom come. The Lord is the King, and the King is coming again.
Years ago, when my son was about 7 or 8 years old, he was brushing his teeth, getting ready for bed, came out of the hallway and he says, Dad! And I thought something was wrong. And I said, what, son? What's wrong? And he says, what about those that never hear the gospel? Now, first of all, what 7 and 8-year-old is asking questions like that when they're brushing their teeth? And the next thing I began to ask myself is, what am I going to say? This is the problem of religious pluralism. Religious pluralism is the idea that all religions are equally valid ways to God, and that's what we want to explore in this session. People are happy to accept that God exists. It's when they begin to say that Jesus is the only way to God that people begin to get upset or object to the idea that Jesus is the only way of salvation. This is called Christian particularism, the idea that only Jesus provides a way of salvation. And Scripture is clear that Jesus is the only way of salvation. In Acts 4:12, it states, "There is salvation in no one else. There is no other name under heaven given amongst men by which they must be saved." This Christian view of particularism is scandalous today as it was in the Roman Empire when the first Christians began to announce the salvation of Jesus. The idea of religious pluralism, the idea that all religions are equally valid ways to God, usually come about as people look around the world and they see all of these religions and they ask themselves, how can only one of them be true? They must all be true. The idea of religious pluralism are textbook examples of informal fallacies. For example, some people might say it must be arrogant to say that only one religion is the correct way to God. Now, that's called an ad hominem fallacy, where you critique the person and not the idea. You could be arrogant, but still be correct. You might just need an attitude adjustment, but still be proclaiming the truth. Another aspect of religious pluralism is the idea that if you grew up in India, you'd be Hindu. If you grew up in Afghanistan, you'd be a Muslim. If you grew up in China, you'd be a Buddhist. And if you grew up in Brazil, you'd be Catholic. This is the idea that you are destined to be what religion you are because of your demographic. This is another textbook example of an informal fallacy called the genetic fallacy, that someone is not right or wrong because of where they came from. You could be correct, even though you might have learned about a religion in a particular geographical location, but where you learn it doesn't testify to the truth of it. The real problem of religious pluralism is the fate of the unevangelized. What happens to those that have never heard of the gospel of Jesus Christ? See, it seems unfair to condemn someone when they just didn't have a chance because of geographic or historical accident that they never heard of who Jesus Christ is and what the gospel is. So let's do a thought experiment. There are technically 4 categories of people. The first 2 categories I want to explore are those that have heard the gospel versus those that haven't heard the gospel. So there are many people that have heard the gospel and might have responded to it or rejected it. And there are other people that have not heard the gospel. There's another category or division I like to make: those that would respond to the gospel and accept it, and those that would reject the gospel. Now, if you think about these 4 categories, there are people that hear the gospel and accept it, people that hear the gospel and don't accept it. There's people that don't hear the gospel, but had they heard it, they would have accepted it. And then there's people that hadn't heard the gospel, but had they heard it, they would have rejected it. There's 3 categories that aren't problematic. For example, people that hear the gospel and accept it versus people that hear the gospel and reject it. They both got to hear the gospel. They responded to the revelation that was given to them. And then the category of people that don't hear the gospel, but had they heard it, they would have freely rejected it. Those three categories of individuals are not problematic. It's that fourth category, people that would hear the gospel, but had they heard it, they would have accepted it, but they just never had a chance to hear it. It seems unfair for that category to be condemned when they would have freely accepted it. Now, God, being all-powerful and all-knowing, knows who would freely accept the gospel had they heard it. So, literally, if someone would freely accept the gospel had they heard it, God, being all-powerful and all-knowing, ensures that they will always hear the gospel. So this is an idea that either God will move on a missionary's heart, or send a vision, or dreams, or even angelic visitation for those people that haven't heard the gospel but would freely accept it. So technically, that one category of people who don't hear the gospel but would have freely accepted it, those people don't exist, because God created the time and place that every person must live, and that those that would freely accept the gospel, God ensures that they hear it. So when I stopped with my son several years ago and he asked, what happened to those people that don't hear the gospel? This is how I answered him. If there is anyone in the world who would freely accept the gospel, God ensures that they'll hear it.